We're about just past halfway in the Gospel of Mark, and to this point Jesus has multiple times told his disciples that he is going to die and that they must follow him even to the cross. But they don't get it. They keep arguing among themselves who's better, and today James and John take that a step further and come to Jesus saying, "We want you to do whatever we ask." This is the opposite of what the prophets and the holy people of old have done. They waited for God to call them. And when he did, they said, "Here I am, send me. How can I serve? Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." But James and John today turn that completely around and say, "Listen, Lord, I'm talking." They want him to do whatever they want. This is something very simple and easy for us to fall into as well. When we see something going wrong in the world or in our life, or we're struggling from something, and we tell God how he needs to be God and what he needs to do right now if he's going to do something right. It's quite proud, isn't it? And we can see how easily we slip into this. But it's something natural to all of us, because it's easy for us to think we know better. But Jesus quickly reminds James and John, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're asking for. They want to sit at the right and the left, but Jesus tells them there's more to this. This comes after the last few weeks that we've heard, where he's not only predicting his passion, but talking about the suffering that they too must undergo if they are truly to be his disciples. They must be baptized with the baptism and drink the cup of suffering. But that's not what they're asking for. John will later find this out when he's at the foot of the cross and he looks to the right and left of Jesus and sees what it looks like to reign with him, to be crucified with him. In fact, there's a hymn in Lent that says, God reigned from a cross, not from a throne, not from some presidential palace or king's estate, but from a cross. And we can see how different that is from what we would expect if we were to tell God how to do things. Jesus goes on that he came to serve, not to be served, but to give his life as a ransom for many, to offer himself in sacrifice so that others might have life. Yes, as God, he had the right to be served. He could have come into this world in all his power, majesty, and glory and said, bow down and worship. That's ultimately what we must do, but that's not the way he went about it. He came to show us the way by serving us, by helping us to see what it is we must undergo as well. The first reading enlightens this. Isaiah is talking about the suffering servant. He gives his life as an offering for sin. He shall see his descendants in a long life. Because of his affliction, he shall see fullness of days and justify many, all through his suffering. This is the way that God ordained that Christ should come to serve us. Because any worldly power would try to throw money at the problem or exert political influence, and in the end, be no better off than they started. But Christ came to transform us from within by shedding his blood, by making it so that we could become new creations in him. And in that way, he serves us so that we in turn might serve him by entering into his sacrifice, by picking up the cross daily and following him. This isn't an option for Christians. We have been baptized with his own baptism, meaning our lives must be conformed to him who was crucified, died, and was raised. The cross is the only way. It's the only way that we have to get to him, and that is where he finds us as well. There's hope in this, as we see in the second reading to the Hebrews, because it points out that Christ is not like some distant God. He's not some far-off mediator. He has been tested like us in every way without sin. He knows our struggle. He knows what we're going through because he took on our human nature. And the sin around him, he knew what it was like to be affected by it. Not that he fell to it, but he understands what it is that we struggle and suffer with day in and day out. And so the letter to the Hebrew tells us, let us confidently approach the throne of grace, therefore, to receive mercy and find grace for timely help. We see in James and John the worldly view of things, but this is not the Christian view. We can look beyond these readings to the lives of the saints. There was no saint, at least after their conversion, that would have approached Jesus in this way. They would have come to him with extremely bold confidence in their prayer, but they still would have recognized him as the creator and them as the created. They would not have tried to usurp that, but come to him, yes, in bold confidence, but in humble confidence, they would come to him. Even those who had power or money or influence never used it to build themselves up. There are kings and queens who are sainted, who built up the kingdom of God instead of their own. They helped the poor. They offered sacrifice in the Mass and in their own lives so that others might know Christ. We even have in our area St. Catherine Drexel, who came from a very rich family with lots of influence, but did not try to make a name for herself. Rather, she went about helping those who needed it and used her money and influence to build up the kingdom of God. We can see this in the side chapel with all the different churches and schools that she built. This was clearly not her own enterprise, but something that she did out of love for God, to bring the power of the cross to this place in the world. This is true all through time. The desert fathers and mothers did not go into the miserable desert for the fun of it. They went away from civilization to take up the cross and to bring its power into this world, a power which this world does not know and does not want. St. Paul of the Cross, St. John of the Cross, they were known for their attachment to the sacrifice of Christ. They weren't called St. John of the money and St. Paul of the power or anything like that, because they were attached to Christ and to his kingdom, his power, his glory, instead of the things that this world offers so fleetingly and passingly. This means that for us, we too must seek the same. Now, in Gallup, it's not that we have great opportunities to become rich and powerful and wealthy. We do, however, have many opportunities to embrace the cross, to enter into this life that Christ has for us, to live out this baptism, to drink this cup, and to serve those around us. This starts, of course, by our serving God here in Mass and our regular prayer, and extends to serving those around us who need it. Someone sorrowing the loss of a loved one, the poor on the street, or simply someone that needs a kind word. Serving others extends this cross to them, so that they are not suffering alone, that they are not suffering pointlessly, but that they are with Christ. I recently came across a quote of Mother Teresa, who did wonderful things in this way, that I think sums all this up well. She was in the worst parts of the world. She served so many people to help them to know the cross. Instead of going by the way of the world and trying to build up money and power, she instead tried to love people in a sacrificial way and transformed them, transformed this world. And so if we are discouraged by what we are going through, or if we're discouraged by this high calling, not only do we have Christ in heaven, but we have this remembrance that Mother Teresa gives us. We've done so much with so little for so long that now we can do anything with nothing because we can do it with Christ.